I'm Janet, and this is my husband Randy, and we're the Tomlins.
Welcome to Autism and Reality.
So our story begins in 1992. The Pirates were in a tight race with the New York Mets for a division title, and they happened to be in town for a 3-game series. It happened to be family night at the stadium where they would open the gates and let all the fans come in early, two hours before the game, so that they can see the Pirates with their kids on the field and their wives. We were really excited about this night.
Yeah, it was an exciting time. We were in first place, and it happened to be my best year in the big leagues, and things were going great. And we were looking forward to adding to that tonight with having during the player announcements of having them announce that we were pregnant.
Yeah, during the player introductions. But we were the youngest on the team with all the veterans, and everyone was so excited for us when they announced Randy Tomlin, his wife Janet, and coming in the spring of 1993, their new baby Tomlin. Gives me cold chills still thinking about it.
I know, it was exciting.
It was exciting.
We were just so excited to be there to kind of be like a part of the family.
Yeah, to finally have a little child, to have a Pirates jersey with Tomlin's name and number on the back of it. So we spent that off season decorating, and surprisingly, we didn't do anything baseball. We did clowns and bright colors.
Yeah, circus.
Circus. It was. We did a circus themed nursery. And it wasn't long before that we made the trip to Florida for spring training.
Yeah, we went down there, moved down there to get ready for spring training, and went to get ready for the '93 season.
Yeah. So the plan was that I was going to stay in spring training until the middle of March, and then I would fly back because we really wanted to have the baby in Pittsburgh. We were comfortable. We had already done all the birthing things in Pittsburgh, and we just didn't have a doctor that we were comfortable with in Florida.
It would have been hard too with having the baby in Florida, and then we leave to start the season, so traveling with the newborn.
Yeah.
And that would have made it really more difficult, and so we just thought it best we just go back to Pittsburgh and have the baby.
Yeah, and I had to leave earlier than we had planned because I started to have a lot of contractions, and so I actually flew back to Pittsburgh by myself, 9 months pregnant. And in 1993, the northeast part of the United States was punished by a severe snowstorm. And so it was a blizzard. And so there I was in Pittsburgh by myself in 6 to 7 feet of snow, 9 months pregnant, 30 miles from the hospital. All roads were closed. Everything was closed. I was snowed in. You couldn't even see the street from my driveway.
It was all the way down in Florida because we had a severe. It was almost like a hurricane down in Florida, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Part of that storm as it went on up.
So and one of our neighbors was a doctor, worked for an OBGYN, and she lived just across from us, and she contacted me every day and said, if you're going to labor, you just call me, we'll get you there. We'll fly a helicopter in to get you. But the snow melted and the roads opened, and I was able to get my mom down from New York, and Randy's mom came up from Virginia, and I had my support that I needed. And on the early morning hours of March 24th, my water broke, and we made the trip to McGee's Women's Hospital, which is about 30 minutes from our house, and started labor. We called Randy, and you were able to get on that 6 o'clock flight from Bradenton up.
Yeah, I remember. He called me, and then I called the training staff for the Pirates and told them we were in labor, and that I was headed north, and they said it was fine, and so called the airlines and said, hey, my wife's having a baby. And I remember they were excited, and they upgraded me to first class.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and which I was sleeping anyway. I was trying to sleep anyway. I was nervous, but and then made it to the hospital.
Yep, we got a lot of extra attention because of Randy being a Pittsburgh Pirate. So the staff and the nurses, they were just incredible with us, and it really helped with the mood. Like, I felt like I wasn't as nervous. I mean, I felt like for my first time that it actually was going really easy and pretty smooth, and I mean, in just a matter of minutes, life just changes. And they had the contraction monitor up, and they were telling me when to start pushing, and a big contraction was coming, and so they told me to push aggressively, and I did. And it was at that contraction that instead of hearing the baby's heartbeat, everything just went flat. And I felt like it was maybe like 10 minutes of everybody just stepping back. And I felt like I didn't know what was going on, but I could see the urgency and the fear in everybody's face. And I could see the doctor telling the nurses to get you out of the room and to prepare for surgery. And
yeah, I didn't really know what was going on either. It was kind of like no explanation at that time. It was like clear the room. We gotta go.
yeah.
Kind of thing.
And I remember the nurse that was there by my side, by my face. She was, pushing the hair out of my face, telling me that I was going to be okay. There was another nurse who was bringing in a blue curtain, and a blue curtain was going between me and the doctor. And then I felt like a heat, I could feel them cutting into me, and I was turning my head to try to look at the emergency room window because I could see you in the face of the window there banging. And I could hear the nurse was just telling me, keep your eye on me, you're going to be fine, you're going to be fine. And she kept brushing the hair on my face, telling me I was going to be fine. And it seemed like it was maybe 10-15 minutes, but I really don't think it was more than a minute before I heard the cry of a baby. And I just remember the nurse just looking at me with big tears coming down her face and just telling me that you have a boy, it's a boy. And then they let you back in.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next thing I remember is you were by my face telling me, Janet, he's beautiful, he's beautiful. And then that's when I just was out. I don't remember anything after that.
Yeah, they let me back in. They got him resuscitated or and crying, and then let me back in about the time they took him over into the under the lamp there and started to clean him up a little bit, and and then they wrapped him up then, and they let me hold him, and then it was wait, I gotta get out. They took him and said we have to take care of your wife, and then kind of shooed me off to the to outside towards the waiting room, and just kind of said that we'll have him over in the nursery, and we'll let you know and talk to you about how your wife's doing.
So when the doctor came in after they had me through recovery, he explained to us that during that contraction, Coy's shoulder had gotten stuck on my pelvic area, and he couldn't come through, and his neck was bending, and that's what cut off the circulation.
Yeah, it cut off the circulation, so he couldn't breathe, and
that's why it went flat. And
yeah, and they were they were kind of monitoring there a little bit anyway, because he was showing a little bit of signs, because I do recall the doctor kind of going like, okay, just keep an eye on that, and then on the big contraction there, it kind of went, and that's when they did the emergency.
And there was no way we knew that in advance, or that they knew that was going to be a problem, and that actually led into having to have the cesareans for our second children who came later. But we stayed in the hospital for 3 days, and we came home from the hospital on March 28th. You met the team in Cleveland, right? Is that
yeah.
what? Yes. Mm-hmm. You met the team in Cleveland, and my mom and Randy's mom, they stayed with me for the first week. And, everything seemed normal as I would think it would be. I mean, I had not had a child, so, I figured things were going well. We had a terrible experience with nursing, and so we had to pull Coy from that and start with formula. We had a terrible experience with formula. We went several months where we just couldn't get the right formula in him. He would take an ounce or two, and then he would just project it everywhere. And so this is where the pediatricians started to really get concerned. Babies usually lose a little bit of weight the first couple of weeks of infancy, but then they regain it really quickly. And Coy lost weight and he never regained it. It's called failure to thrive. He wasn't keeping the formula down. We couldn't keep baby food in him. Anything that he would drink or eat, he would gag and throw up immediately, and it would just project everywhere. And we really started to run into issues around that 3rd, 4th month normal pediatrician visit because he was nowhere near meeting any of the milestones or on any of the scales. He was way below weight and length and motor skills and physical skills. And that's when we really started to notice that he was delayed. There were some delays there. And it was kind of it was very hard actually. Our first year with him was really, really hard. We were in and out of that doctor's office every month, and every month we would leave crying because there was something new that they had brought up. 6 to 9 months, he wasn't crawling, he wasn't sitting on his own, he wasn't holding his bottle. That was probably the first thing, is that he wouldn't hold his bottle normally. He wouldn't look at his hands or.
And too, all the tests they did during even during that time, because they were trying to figure out what was going on. I remember me going to the West Coast, they thought it was something wrong with his skull not growing.
Yeah, we were in the hospital 3 days for that.
And so they were thinking about doing some procedure where they're gonna have to open his skull up to relieve pressure, and it's just one trauma thing after another.
So by his first year's birthday, he had been in the hospital 3 times, in and out of the doctor's appointments. We had a long list of things that we knew what was not the issue, but we never knew what the issue was and why he wasn't developing correctly, why we were having so much issues with the texture of the food and him not keeping it down. And in that time, we also decided to move from Pittsburgh and build a house in Florida. And so we had to find a pediatrician in Florida, and it started the process and the evaluations all over again, the questions, some of the same tests that we had to go through. And so by the year between 1 and 2 was basically similar. It was more doctor visits. We could see that his delays were getting more apparent as other children his age were walking and climbing, and he still wasn't even crawling. And wasn't talking.
It was difficult, and it's still all the challenges. He still wouldn't eat, still wouldn't sleep, and at times he didn't really want to be held.
Yeah.
Just kind of really tighten up, and kind of get rigid in the sense of there, and then we took turns, but it was very hard on you because during that time, but we kind of took turns during the night. I remember countless nights, just one of us or other rocking and holding him, trying to get him to sleep.
Yeah.
All night long, just till he slept, nobody slept.
Right. So, when he turned 2 years old, so in 1995, you had left the Pirates and were with the Giants, and that took us to spring training in San Francisco. And remember, he had like chronic ear infections, and we had seen a pediatrician out there just to clear up an ear infection, and he recommended that we see an ear specialist because still at 2.5 years old, Coy wasn't saying any words, and the words that he was saying sounded muffled and like they were underwater. And so while we were in Phoenix for spring training, we saw an ear specialist, and he had said both of Coy's ears were just, damaged with infection and hardened over
wax.
Yeah, and so they recommended we put tubes in, and so we went that route. We had him sedated, and we put the tubes in, and the specialist gave us great hope that would be the reason why Coy wasn't walking and that Coy wasn't talking, and that was probably interrupting his sleep as well. And so he thought within 6 months we would see a miraculous change in Coy. And so even while we were there in Phoenix, we started to see some different behavioral things start to come to the surface, like hand flapping. Remember, we didn't know what that was about. Like he would take his sock and just pull a sock off his foot and just flap it back and forth. He was obsessed with the color orange. Like he had to have everything orange, which is when you got that little orange stuffed baseball, and he just fell in love with this little orange baseball giveaway from one of the Giants spring training games, and he loved it. To that point, he hadn't showed interest in very many toys at all, and so we named this little baseball Fred. And remember, we would tell all these stories about Fred going to the dentist, or Fred going to the grocery store, or Fred taking a bath, because all those things seemed to cause meltdowns with him.
Yeah, just doing those things, going to the grocery store or that, and, you know, even the route which we would go would get him upset, and Fred just kind of seemed to kind of help distract and calm him down. So it was, I think it was definitely a something that made us more aware of something was going on.
Right, but nobody still had any answers. They were just saying, well, you know, children develop at different ages, and he's really, you know, he's really sociable, and he's really a strong child, and so we still knew that something was wrong, but nobody knew how to help us, and we just didn't have any answers. And so between the ages of 2 and 3, we had a friend ask us if anybody had brought up the disorder of autism, and gosh, I mean, we knew of 25 other things he didn't have, but
and we're in Florida now, so you know, we're because you know, I gotten released by the Giants and had shoulder surgery and moved back to Florida in their house, and just so we're kind of all together there, you know, 24 hours a day in their house, and just seeing these things. And I remember Lori, you know, asking you about that.
Yeah, and I remember saying, no, you know, I know the pediatricians have told us a bunch of things he doesn't have, and we actually went to the pediatrician soon after that and asked them if they thought this could be autism, and no, they were like, no, definitely no, yeah, no, he's nowhere near that. And so then we started to look into things, and there wasn't much at all to be.
That's when the internet was new. So.
You had to dial it up. You had to dial it up.
Yeah.
And so I was able to locate a few pages on autism, and this one page had 25 signs that your child has autism. And I was reading through the signs and symptoms, and he had number 1, and he had number 2, and he had number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I mean, I was just, you know, astounded. I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, he has autism, he's autistic. And you know, I showed Randy, and we went to our pediatrician and said, look, we really think he's got autism. And again, they told us, no, we've been seeing him, he's fine.
Yeah, only because back then the autism was so new, and didn't know that a lot of doctors' minds, autism was the extreme cases where they had, you know, kids would be really, you know, kind of hurting themselves to
right. It wasn't a spectrum. It wasn't a spectrum at that point.
Spectrum, you know, it was either severe or no.
Yeah.
Rather than looking at the list and going, yes, okay, he's not one that kind of, you know, does physical things to himself, but he does all the other things that meet the same criteria.
Yeah. So we he's 3 now, and he's walking. We also had our second child, a little girl, and so now we had Coy, and then we had our infant daughter, and we started to, one of my favorite things was, do you remember when he would put the pacifier in Ellison's mouth, and he'd take it out and she'd go wham, and he'd put it back in, and he'd take it out again, she'd go wham, and he had pleasure in doing that for hours. He would push her in the swing, and when she'd come towards him, he'd take the sucky out, and she'd make that noise, and it was just, he loved it. He loved doing that for hours. In this time, we also made a transition and moved from Florida back up to Virginia, because we really wanted support too. But had Dr. Falwell called you and asked you at that? Is that why we made the move, because you knew?
No, we moved, if you remember, we moved back to Virginia after we figured, you know, I was done playing, and moved back to Virginia to be at home and try to figure out what was, you know, for Coy's sake, to get, you know, to get a diagnosis. Remember, we met with the pediatricians there and told them we were leaving, we're going to Virginia. When we get to Virginia, we are going to take him to the Kluge Foundation, where which is for autism, and we're going to have him evaluated. And the round table of doctors that were there, I think it was 7 of them or so, we went through, and they swore, well, you're going to get disappointed that he does not have autism. And of course, my soft-spoken wife right here, you know,
Flex some muscles,
looked across the table, said, listen, we're gonna go, we're gonna have him evaluated, okay? And we're gonna find out if he has autism. And if he does, you can bet we're gonna come back here, okay, and we're gonna have serious words, you know, and more than that. And the lead doctor looked at us and reached in, pulled out his thing, and wrote a prescription right there, and handed it to Janet and said, "Good luck."
So we got to Lynchburg, and we got the appointment set up to go to Kluge. It was a 2-week evaluation. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was quite traumatic in the sense of knowing how in the world is Coy going to ever do it, because he wouldn't want to do anything at that point. Everything
He was
set,
scared to death of doctors, anybody in a white coat.
Yeah, he could not go to a doctor at all.
Yeah.
And, it was pretty much going to be a very hard thing. But I remember the first day we went. You know, when we first went into the office area, they kind of steered us over to the waiting period. It was kind of a little playground area, and
The lead psychiatrist,
yeah,
right?
the lead psychiatrist. You know, after we were there about an hour, Coy just kind of meandering around. The lead psychiatrist came out and introduced himself and said he's just kind of watched Coy for a couple of minutes and such, and he did. And he said, well, I know we're going to go through all the evaluations, but I can tell you right now he has autism.
Yeah.
Just from his actions.
Just watching him play.
Just watching him play and his mannerisms and those things.
Yeah. And so we saw the speech pathologist, the occupational therapist,
Yeah,
the physical therapist, the developmental delayed doctor. We also saw the social psychiatrist. He was rough.
Mm-hmm.
He was rough.
Yeah,
He was interrogating.
He asked a lot of questions that almost got him, you know,
Punched in the nose. Really, like
Yeah.
you were close.
Yeah.
You were close. Like
you know, insinuating things or just
Wondering
trying to find out, you know,
if Coy was being abused.
yeah, all
Yeah,
those things.
that was causing some of his behavior, that maybe he was acting out because there was a form of abuse happening in the home.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you're more abusive right now than anything.
Yeah. So we finished up the 2 weeks, and we had to meet with the entire group of doctors. No, actually it was just the one lead doctor.
Mm-hmm.
We met with the lead doctor in his office, and he had a binder, and he had the reports from all the therapists, and he said it was unanimous across the board that they believed that Coy was autistic. He was 4 years old, and that's pretty much all he said. He didn't have...
He didn't have anything for us. He didn't have any words of encouragement in the sense is like, yes, we have the, I'm pretty sure and we're pretty positive, very unanimous that your son has autism, and you know, all we can offer is this right here, this medical booklet, whatever, that you can kind of use the way you want to. It has a lot of recommendations, information,
things that you probably won't.
Things you can follow, and
things that he probably wouldn't do. Hey, they offered us a school. There was a school in Charlottesville for autistic children, but he would have to live there, and it was only $120,000 a year for him to live there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like crazy, you know, with that. But you know, we just said no, thank you. And then
I don't know that we were shocked. I don't think we were shocked, because I think we had settled it in our heart that we believed that he was autistic because we saw all the signs, and we believed that we were the professionals because we were with him 24/7. And so I don't think we were shocked, but I do think the initial blow of hearing them say that he's autistic, I think it was like a wave of fear, anxiety, because I remember I started to cry. So we were really only in the doctor's office for less than 5 minutes because there was not much he could give us. There was not much he knew to give us.
no, it again.
This is back in 1996.
Yeah, and it was the biggest thing is, you know, it's more of like handing out the diagnosis, and you know, it's
That's a hard word for anybody.
I know. and that was like it. We were waiting, for like, okay,
Who do we go see next?
now we're supposed to do. What we're supposed to do, and all we got was really just a blank stare of like, no emotion of anything except the kind of look you get when you go. You just got to accept it, and here's that binder. By the way, this is all we can offer you. But there are a bunch of resources here that you're certainly
Can look into.
Can look into.
We can get you referrals to them.
Get referrals, and we already knew Dr. Brennan.
Yeah.
Down in Lynchburg, who was more helpful than anything. But there it was just like, no, here's the binder, and good luck, and so we, certainly very emotional. You were crying, and I wasn't crying. I was more mad in a sense of lack of support, lack of empathy in the sense of, you just handed our son
a life
sentence, and along with that you gave nothing else except a big old page of medical stuff that nobody can understand, and said, here's your guide, so we just got up and
walked out.
Started walking out, and we had prayed continually, and I kind of got the feeling then from the Holy Spirit and God that, you know what, we don't need a book. We have the best manual there is, and I took that manual that he gave me, and as we walked past the door, I threw it in the trash. I said, the only book we need is the Bible, and Coys going to get raised to God's standards, and those are the best, and that's the way we're going to do. I said, as the best we can find what we need to there. God will give us all we need.
Yeah, I remember the road trip back, and of course I was crying because I cry about everything, and I'm the mom. And I remember one thing you said to me. You said that God's standard doesn't change because Coy's autistic. We still have to raise him to God's standard, and it might be a little challenging now because he's autistic, but we're going to find a way, and God's going to provide that way for us. And he said, Janet, I don't ever want to hear autism as an excuse for anything, for behavior, for lack of ability, or for this being a disability. We will consider everything Coy does an ability and not a disability. And we never did. We never used autism as an excuse for bad behavior or why he was doing something or couldn't do something. We raised him normal.
Yeah, and that was as we traveled on, and when doctors eventually came on, and we'll be able to share a lot of this as we go along through our story. That the doctors were amazed that Coy started to respond in a way that he should not have. Such as, one of the things with autistic kids is eye contact. And of course, we've raised our kids that, when you talk to someone, you look at them in the eye.
You make eye contact.
You make eye contact, okay, and you interact with them. And that's, for an autistic kid, that's hard because they like to stare off into space like I do right now. So, but we kind of did that. That was one of the things we were going to do, and Coy got pretty good at it. But we just said no. We're going to raise him and love him like our son, the son he is, and go. But there were certainly things. Emotionally, we had to deal with a lot, and certainly for me, being my firstborn, our son. Wanted him to follow in the footsteps, and
it wasn't a lot of emotions.
And taking the blow there, knowing that he's not going to ever be able to do anything like that because of his disability. But God always has a way of turning that around. Our inabilities, turning them into abilities, and as you'll find out if you follow us and subscribe to our channel, that Coy is Coys autistic.
He's autistic.
Yes, and
This probably wasn't the life we dreamed of or planned.
no,
Not at all, but it's exactly the life we needed. He's exactly what we needed.
yes.
Coy's going to turn 29 next month. We have 29 years of bitter trials but beautiful blessings, tons of experience, tons of stories, and we want to share that with you. We want you to know that this can be a successful journey for you too. And we want you to hit subscribe, and we want you to follow us for the full journey of Coy.
Yes, and find that there is hope. There is hope for your family. Okay, just as with us, we endured the early times and went through it, and God brought us through. But yet, we know that there is hope because we have proof of that in Coy.
And we want you to choose hope, because when you choose hope, you open up a door of possibilities with your child.